And welcome to Hannity. Tonight, a credibility crisis is gripping the Obama White House as aides scramble to deal with three major scandals. Now, we begin with breaking developments related to the Internal Revenue Service's efforts to target conservative political groups during the 2012 election cycle. Now, a short time ago, Fox News obtained a scathing report issued by the Treasury Inspector General for tax audit. Now, this 54-page document, got it right here, absolutely pounds the Obama administration and the IRS for engaging in taxpayer-funded, politically motivated witch hunts. Now, let's review the findings. Number one, the report reads that beginning in early 2010, quote, the IRS used inappropriate criteria that identified for review Tea Party and other organizations applying for tax-exempt status based upon their names or policy positions. Now, the report also reveals that the IG recommended 9 specific steps that needed to be taken in order to prevent this from ever happening again in the future. However, the IRS agreed to implement only 7 of the 9 steps, and this did not sit well with the IG. In a letter to the tax agency, he writes, quote, the IRS's response also states that issues discussed in the report have been resolved. We disagree with this statement as well. Corrective actions have not been fully implemented. Now, the arrogance of this administration and the IRS simply cannot be overstated. Now, Appendix 8 of the IG's report is a copy of the letter that the IRS sent responding to investigators. In this, they actually deny any of this was political. They say, quote, we believe that the frontline career employees that made the decisions acted out of a desire for efficiency and not out of any political or partisan viewpoint. Again, the Inspector General disagrees and says more needs to be done. And by the way, frankly, so do I. Now, just minutes ago, President Obama released a statement saying that the report's findings are, quote, intolerable and inexcusable. Now, the statement from the president also reads, quote, I've directed Secretary Lew to hold those responsible for these failures accountable and to make sure that each of the Inspector General's recommendations are implemented quickly so that such conduct will never happen again. Now, we shall see. And earlier today, before Fox obtained the IG report, 2 very high-profile news conferences were called to address all of the developing situations in D.C. Now, not only the IRS targeting scandal, but also the administration's decision to secretly seize phone records of the Associated Press journalists, as well as the national security cover-up that took place following the Benghazi terrorist attack. Now, the dueling press briefings were held this afternoon, but neither of them resulted in very much substantive material. Instead, what we saw was even more stonewalling from the least transparent administration in American history. Watch this.
This is a matter, when it comes to the IRS, that is under review by the independent Inspector General. We have not seen that report.
I'm not familiar with all that went into the formulation of the subpoena. I was recused from that matter.
Other than press reports, we have no knowledge of any attempt by the Justice Department to seek phone records of the Associated Press.
I don't know all that went into the formulation of the subpoena.
We are not involved at the White House in any decisions made in connection with ongoing criminal investigations.
You're getting into matters that are beyond my knowledge.
It would be wholly inappropriate for me to have answers to those questions.
I don't know what the circumstances were here.
I think that we have to wait and see what next steps are.
I can't answer that question.
I cannot, and he cannot, comment specifically on an ongoing criminal investigation.
Perhaps we can get for you the exact date. I don't know when that was.
I can't respond to this in the specific.
I'm not sure about it. Again, I don't know the facts there.
Unbelievable. Joining me now with analysis, former Bush advisor, Fox News contributors. IG makes recommendations. IRS says, nah, we don't agree with that. Oh, you got your own report. All right, you come prepared.
You know, what is it, Hannity? What kind of reading material were we being forced to
I read
read
every
all the
page.
time?
I mean,
yeah,
but
same.
This is disturbing. Number one, not only the conclusions of this and the investigation, as we've been reporting, but the fact that they didn't agree with the IG report.
Right.
Your reaction.
Right. And as you said, the IG was scathing, and they said, well, we're gonna do these 7 things, and then we're gonna do these other things. And the IG said the things that you propose to do are not acceptable, and some that you claim you're doing, you're not doing. So no, it was a very tough report. Now look, let's not get lost though here, because we're missing a very important piece of this puzzle. You know, the administration blaming this on low-level bureaucrats in Cincinnati. That turned out not to be true. We now know that people at the central headquarters of the Internal Revenue Service in Washington were involved. But we're missing something else, which is They remember, they were doing what people on Capitol Hill wanted them to do. In 2010, Max Baucus, the Democrat senator from Montana and chairman of the powerful Senate Finance Committee that oversees the Treasury Department, wrote a letter to the director of the IRS saying, go investigate these kind of groups. We had Chuck Schumer, who's been stirring around this for a number of years. By 2012, he goes out and gets a similar tough letter to the head of the IRS saying, look into these groups. And he gets 6 other Democrats to join him in signing the letter. Michael Bennet of Colorado, the chairman of the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, Al Franken of Minnesota, Markey of Oregon, Shaheen of New Hampshire, Tom Udall of New Mexico, and Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island. And they all signed a letter to the director of the IRS saying, a very tough letter, you better look into these kind of groups and stop them or else. And then Schumer goes out and gets Congressman Peter Welsh of Vermont to get a similar letter put together in the House. And then finally, we have another set of letters from Carl Levin of Michigan, the retiring Democrat from Michigan, who sends very tough letters to the Treasury Department and the IRS over this, says their answers are unacceptable, and threatens to, quote, take them to task in a hearing in front of Congress over these issues. So maybe these low-level bureaucrats aren't so low-level, and maybe they were influenced by Democrats in the Congress writing them letters saying, take on these groups or else you're going to face the consequences in front of us.
All right, let's go to the press conference at the White House today, and there is the. By the way, Jay Carney's an embarrassment. Jay Carney, when he said there was only stylistic differences in the 12 different versions of talking points in Benghazi, that was an outright lie. Because
that was a complete and total lie. Where is it in the CIA draft? Yeah. We know what the CIA draft was. Where was the storyline that this all happened because of spontaneous demonstrations provoked by an anti-Muslim video? Where is that in the CIA talking points? I don't see it. I don't see it at all.
No, they had the right story. They had the truth.
That's right. They had the absolute facts, and the State Department and the White House. And look, we don't know precisely who did this, but in a Saturday morning, September 15th meeting at the White House, the deputy director of the CIA is told to excise all of those comments. Now, look, I don't think that's Newland of the State Department, the spokeswoman over there. I don't even think it's Ben Rhodes, the communications guy for the National Security Council. No, neither one of those should be telling the deputy director of the CIA what to put in something or not to put in something. The question is, who's the heavy who told him to take it out, and who's the heavy in this drama who came up with this stupid lie that it was the video?
So we got 3 big scandals now engulfing the Obama White House. We got Benghazi, we got the IRS scandal, then of course we got the Holder Justice Department secretly seizing the phone records of the AP. Now, the lapdog media that have never done anything but suck up to this administration actually showed a little bit of life today, probably only because it might have impacted their profession. Watch this.
Obama's being compared to President Nixon on this. How does he feel about that?
Again, I don't have a reaction from President Obama. I can tell you that the people who make those kind of comparisons need to check their history.
You say check our history, rapid commentary, but you have to understand and hear how it sounds like the administration might be hiding something.
Can you say categorically that nobody at the White House and nobody on the president's political team had any knowledge or was involved in any way in the targeting of Tea Party groups by the IRS?
Yes. The president believes that the press, as a rule, needs to be to have an unfettered ability to pursue investigative journalism. And
how could it be unfettered if you're worried about having your phone records?
Well, again, I can't respond to this in the specific.
Don't we know that part of it is fact? It's not in the if area anymore. It's fact.
That's a preposterous assertion, Alexis. Alexis, shake your head and editorialize, but let me finish.
Reporters covering on other administrations when it didn't work and the information comes out. Just put it out.
Even their biggest fans are fed up with the lies, Karl Rove. It's taken a while, hasn't it? Where have they been?
Yeah, it has. But this is a troika of controversies that have come together. Look, I think the IRS is a scandal. I think Benghazi is a scandal. I'm withholding judgment on the AP thing. Just yet. I think they made a mistake.
Seizing the phone records in an attempt to track down a promising
I understand.
leak?
Yeah, but let me put this in context. Yeah, let me explain. I think that if we have a dangerous leak of information like this, it ought to be found. Secret information was shared, leaked to the AP. But I don't think the government ought to be very careful about going in and getting the phone records of the people at the AP. They should work the other end of it. Who do they suspect the leak could have come from? And check the phone records of those government employees.
Patrick Fitzgerald.
Don't be going out there and getting don't go out there and get 100 editors and reporters at the Associated Press and secretly get their phone records for 2 months in order to check out who they were talking to. That is very damaging and very dangerous.
Well,
I do think that they ought to go track that leak down. This was, in my opinion, the wrong way to handle it.
All right, we're going to see. We'll continue to follow it. More details literally by the hour. Karl Rove, thank you for being with us. Appreciate it. Now,
thanks,
we
Sean.
have a busy news night tonight. Still ahead, former Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld live in studio. But first tonight.
I hope they don't get any more air. They are the Taliban wing of American politics, and we all ought to be a little worried about them.
Now, the leader of the NAACP goes on a racially charged rant against the Tea Party and says to target conservative groups. All right, as the scandal widens about the IRS's blatant effort to target conservatives, some on the left are saying that the tax agency, they didn't do anything wrong. Now, earlier today, when asked if the scandal was comparable to when his organization was investigated by the IRS, the chairman of the NAACP, Julian Bond, he had this to say.
In 2004, Congressman Charlie Rangel called the audit a, quote, police state tactic. So do you think that there might be a double standard being looked at here?
No, I don't think there's a double standard at all. I think it's entirely legitimate to look at the Tea Party. I mean, here are a group of people who are admittedly racist, who are overtly political, who tried as best they can to harm President Obama in every way they can. I don't think there are correct parallels between the incidents. It was wrong for the IRS to behave in this heavy-handed manner. They didn't explain well before or now what they're doing and why they're doing it, but there are no parallels between these two.
Chairman Bond, what do you think that the fallout will be for the Obama administration, especially during a time where the Tea Party had maybe lost a little air? Do you think that this is going to help inflate that, especially as we ramp up to the midterms for 2014?
I hope not. I hope they don't get any more air. They are the Taliban wing of American politics, and we all ought to be a little worried about them.
So do you think that's a little harsh, calling them the Taliban wing of American politics?
Not at all. Not at all.
All right, joining me now with reaction, co-host of The Five, Dana Perino, Fox News political analyst Juan Williams. Juan Williams, I don't think anybody, any organization, regardless of political affiliation, should be targeted for what they believe in. I would assume you agree with me, not Julian Bond.
I agree with you, Sean.
This history has been made on this program for the very first time ever. All right. Now, you know something? It bothers me when I hear that here's a group of people who are admittedly racist, overtly political, and then he calls them the Taliban wing. Why would somebody from the NAACP say that when you know it's untrue and I know it's untrue?
Well, I think Julian Bond, as his job with the NAACP, is very sensitive to some of the actions taken by Tea Party over the years, but especially
what actions by the Tea Party that are racist?
We've gone over it here. That members of Congress have said that after the vote they were spitting at them, calling them.
And Andrew Breitbart offered $100,000 for evidence, and there were hundreds of cameras around, and it never was paid.
I'll let you settle that dispute, but I can say that's what those members of Congress said happened. And of course, we've seen the signs, the Joker.
What sign? The Joker? So that you can't.
Yes, they're portraying the president in the most negative way.
And President Bush had pictures of Hitler and mustaches of Hitler. I mean, you want to go through this, shot by shot here?
No, not at all. But I think that all public figures are subject to this kind of mocking. But I'm just telling you that I think that for Julian Bond, especially in his role as head of the NAACP, the sensitivity to the racial mockery is very real. And I can tell you it goes beyond Julian Bond.
This racially charged accusation is false. And I'll say it because I'm tired of it being regurgitated by people on the left. Dana Perino.
Well, I think that Julian Bond's comments are outrageous and inexcusable. That is almost exactly the same words that President Obama used tonight, as he just recently, within the last little bit, released a statement about the IRS situation. The statement is excellent. It's very strong, and it is 5 days too late. President Obama, in his press conference on Monday, says that he learned about the IRS scandal from news reports. Today in the press briefing, White House Press Secretary Jay Carney says people in the White House were notified 2 weeks ago that this was coming. And then there are additional questions of, did anyone else know before that?
That's probably a lie
so did
by Obama.
anybody? No, actually, I don't think so.
Why? You don't think so?
I wonder if nobody told the president. And if that's the case, then there is a management problem inside the White House as well.
Knew, but wait a minute. But we also know that the IRS knew about this maybe as early as 2010, but certainly 2011.
And that's why we need to have the hearing that is going to take place this week, and Congress has every right to look at this. And thankfully, it is a bipartisan look at this because it's shake foundation of the country.
All right, so you got Benghazi, you got failure before, during, and a cover-up after. Incontrovertible. Then you got this case where they're targeting Tea Party members. We don't hear about it before the election. They covered up Benghazi before the election. And now we got the situation with the Associated Press. Seems to me that the Obama White House has some real explaining to do about their behavior.
I think that is true, but I think that the media needs to be looking in the mirror as well. For example, the Tea Party and other conservative groups had been complaining about unfair targeting by the IRS for the last 3 years. The press ignored them. Given that if it was low-level aides, that was just people in Cincinnati doing this and they didn't really have any political acumen, then it probably wouldn't have been too hard for a reporter to pick up the phone and find out, or for White House communications to find out if there was a problem.
But we already know Washington, D.C. knew about it. So,
I know.
All right, Juan, I'm going to ask you a question.
Sure.
I would think that all of these things really bother you in terms of the IRS intimidating people because of their political point of view. Benghazi, we have 4 dead Americans. We did nothing before when requests for help were out there. We did nothing during. People were told to stand down. And a lie, a web of lies was built afterwards. Now the AP story. So my question to you is, what do you recommend the president do to get out of his scandal mix that he's now in?
Well, I could be Dana Perino here. I could say, you know what, I believe in transparency. I think an aggressive press, an adversarial press is all for the good in this country, but the real point is get out and tell people exactly what happened. I understand in the Benghazi case where you have CIA and state fussing and feuding, I don't know that America needs to get into all that.
But our government knew the truth. 12 versions later, we know that they spun a web of lies that had nothing to do with that night.
You know the term CYA, cover your butt. I think both sides, state and Pentagon, were trying to cover their butts. And that's all. It had nothing to do before or during the actual crime, which was the killing of those Americans.
They knew the truth. They spun a web of lies that nobody on the ground told them. And if you're not seeing that for a cover-up, you're just not seeing the truth.
Your whole theory is weak because it was all out there before the election. People knew.
Excuse me. No, it wasn't
out there. That goes back to the point. It goes back to the point that today you had the Washington Post give the Obama administration 4 Pinocchios for talking about Benghazi.
Bingo.
That's 8 months too late to have any effect on the election.
Thank you for the Pinocchio update.
But Juan, am I the nicest co-host you've ever been on with?
You're the best.
Yeah.
You beat that guy you're sitting next to by a mile.
That's right. I'm digging for the truth, and I'm doing it because, you know why? I would think liberals, Democrats, Republicans, conservatives, we have a right to know the truth. We have a right to know that our government's not lying to us. We have a right to know we're not going to be intimidated by an IRS.
But Sean, it's the constant beating of Obama that, some people say maybe it's not just the truth,
Still ahead tonight. Former Defense Secretary Don Rumsfeld here in studio. But first, the Attorney General says that he's opened an investigation into the IRS's targeting of conservatives. So can he be trusted to lead the inquiry? I don't think so. All right, breaking developments tonight regarding the IRS's enemies list. We're now learning that the agency's targeting of conservative groups is much more widespread than initial reports suggested, as officials in Washington were also involved. But let not your heart be troubled. Yes, there he is. Attorney General Eric Holder has announced that his Justice Department, that they plan to investigate. How comforting. Watch this.
I have ordered an investigation to be begun. The FBI is coordinating with the Justice Department to see if any laws were broken in connection with those matters related to the IRS.
The least trustworthy person in Washington, D.C. He's going to oversee this critical inquiry. Now, this is the guy who's repeatedly failed you, the American people, with Fast and Furious, Guantanamo Bay, the 9/11 co-conspirator trials. Remember the Black Panther voter intimidation case? And the list goes on. He has zero credibility. So why should he be trusted with this investigation? Here with reaction, lawyer, author of the Federalist Society, Danielle McLaughlin, and Breitbart.com editor at large, Ben Shapiro. Welcome both of you to the program. Thanks for being with us. Danielle.
Thanks, Sean.
Is this the right guy to be investigating this? Really?
I believe it is. I believe it is. I think what we need to do here is have some calm and rational thought about the fact that what is swirling around in the news media today, certainly today of all days, are some separate issues. We have the AP subpoena investigation, we have the IRS investigation, and obviously Benghazi, which we've been talking about for many months now. I do believe that it is appropriate the Department of Justice investigates. This appears to have been contained within the IRS.
Yeah, well, I look at this, Ben, a little bit differently. I look at nothing but political. He's a political appointee. He's done everything to protect Obama heretofore. And if you look at the specific cases that I mentioned, he has not shown an ability to be objective and discerning in getting to the bottom of anything involving anybody in the administration. I think we need outside counsel to come in and give an objective, discerning eye to this. Your thoughts?
This administration cannot be trusted to investigate itself. Whether it's on Benghazi, where the Accountability Review Board did a tremendously poor job in exposing everything that went on, or whether it is this current AP scandal in which we're still trying to find out who within the Department of Justice authorized this, the common thread really seems to be for this administration that the only agency for which the administration is ultimately responsible is SEAL Team 6. Everybody else, they don't know what's going on or when it's going on or why it's going on. And so now we're going to trust these apparently bumbling people to investigate themselves?
Danielle, why would you trust them to investigate themselves? Why would you do that?
Well, I guess I'd like to go back to this notion of the Associated Press.
I don't want to go back to the
subpoenas.
notion. I want to ask you, why do you trust them to investigate themselves? Why? Why would you? Because Eric Holder owes his job to Obama. All of these people owe their allegiance to Obama. Why shouldn't we have an objective outside investigator?
But Sean, you've got to remember that absolutely Attorney Holder is, like any other cabinet member, a political appointee. The Department of Justice is primarily filled with people who are not political appointees. For example, the deputy.
Excuse me. You think Eric Holder? Look, we saw, for example, in the Philadelphia polling case, the Black Panther voter intimidation case, we had guys on video with batons in military garb outside of a polling place. Did he do anything in that case?
I've got a question for you, Sean. If we go back to the Bush administration,
I don't want to talk about the Bush is out of office 5 years. I asked you, why do you trust them to investigate themselves? I'm tired of your Bush excuses. Why? Why do you trust Eric Holder to do this?
I trust Eric Holder because I trust the process. He will be in hearings tomorrow. If it is determined that he has not done his job appropriately, then he will be removed.
No, we will.
Well, you call me naive, but I believe I'm being reasonable.
I don't think you're being reasonable. I don't think he's shown that he has the character and of judgment to do so. Ben, last word.
You know, she said that his deputies can be trusted. It's Eric Holder who's currently blaming his deputies for what's going on with the AP. So apparently even Eric Holder doesn't trust his own people to investigate, and he's going to have to personally step in when it comes to the AP investigation. So again, the question is, can you trust this administration or can you not? They have a tendency toward tyranny, and they are not trustworthy when it comes to investigating themselves.
All right. Thank you both. Appreciate it. Coming up, a rare television appearance by former Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld in studio. Does he believe a cover-up occurred in the wake of Benghazi? We'll ask him. Also tonight.
The day after it happened, I acknowledged that this was an act of terrorism.
Not true. Now, that was President Obama trying to rewrite history yesterday about what he said immediately following the Benghazi terrorist attack. Now, unfortunately for him, even the Washington Post gave that claim 4 Pinocchios and used Obama's own words to prove him wrong. Now, here's why. The day after the attack, which also happened to be 1 day removed from the anniversary of 9/11, President Obama merely claimed that acts of terror would not be tolerated. He never directly called Benghazi an act of terrorism. And that's not all. As the Post points out, President Obama was repeatedly given opportunities in the days after that to do exactly the right thing. He didn't. Watch.
Mr. President, this morning you went out of your way to avoid the use of the word terrorism in connection with the Libya attack.
Right.
Do you believe that this was a terrorist attack?
Well, it's too early to know exactly how this came about, what group was involved, but obviously it was an attack on Americans.
Then I heard Hillary Clinton say that it was an act of terrorism. Is it? What do you say?
Well, we're still doing an investigation.
All right, joining me now to respond to this, former Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld. His new book, Rumsfeld's Rules, Lessons in Business, Politics, War, and Life. It hit bookshelves today. And Mr. Secretary, good to see you. I love the book.
Thank you.
We're going to have you on specifically to do a lot of talking about that. Why the mysterious reluctance and resistance? Look at that. He was on 2 weeks later on The View, went that day and spoke to the United Nations, and still is blaming a video that we all know was a lie.
I can't imagine how a person could stand up there when everyone involved knew it was a terrorist attack. It was the anniversary of 9/11. The people were not demonstrators, they were well armed. And the idea that it was somehow related to a YouTube video and that narrative kept being promoted, I suppose it's because it fit their hopes and what they wanted to be the case.
You ever hear of anyone going to a spontaneous demonstration and just having in their back pocket a rocket-propelled grenade and rocket launchers and mortars? That never happens, right?
Not a chance.
All right, but what we do know is that the testimony last week by Mr. Hicks in the last conversation that he had with Ambassador Stevens, Ambassador Stevens, we're under fire, we're being attacked. Right. And they never even spoke 2 weeks later when the president was on The View. He hadn't been to Mr. Hicks, nor had anybody else.
That testimony before the Congress was moving. It was emotional. It was firsthand account of what actually took place, and it literally trashed the narrative that had been promoted by the White House.
The CIA got it right. From the next day, they knew, and those on the ground that testified last week, they knew it was an attack. The CIA knew it was an attack. They wrote the original talking points. 12 points later, the truth was removed, and this huge lie about a YouTube video and spontaneity was inserted. How does that happen?
But even go back to the beginning, the Brits knew that there was a danger, and they pulled their people out. The people in the United States, in Benghazi, knew that there was a danger and asked for additional security.
And the CIA warned them. Add one more element to that we learned last week.
No, it was a terrible tragedy, and people lost their lives, and the way it's been handled since then has compounded the problem, because the first rule of something like that is to gather the facts and then inform the American people.
Tell them the truth.
Yeah.
Don't we deserve the truth, don't we?
Indeed. Well, in our system, we have to do.
All right, so before they screwed up because they denied the assistance that the CIA said to give and the people on the ground requested, during, we have two separate stand-down orders. We still don't know where they came from. Can you imagine Americans under attack, other Americans ready to risk their lives to help them? Nobody goes?
That's why these hearings have got to go forward. They're going to have to call the people up, and they're going to have to find out precisely what capabilities existed. Because the first problem was not protecting people when they knew they needed protection. The second problem was not assisting them when they were under attack.
And then the third part is the lie and the cover-up.
Indeed.
Do you have any doubt it's a lie?
You know,
You've been around Washington too long, Mr. Secretary.
Yeah.
I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Well, it's a harsh word. And I think that the hearings will prove what actually took place, and there's no question. But the narrative that was put out after the fact, days after the fact,
weeks after
the fact,
was not true.
Was false.
What if this was you and George W. Bush was president?
Well, everyone blames George W. Bush for everything. So, I mean, even years later.
If the dog bites, if the bee stings, if you're feeling sad, it's all Bush's fault?
I've never seen a situation like that in my life. And, of course, he hasn't defended himself. He's been quiet and has not wanted to respond, and I can understand that. But
I wish he'd go out and
he deserves defense.
Take a shot back once in a while verbally and go after him. But all right, so we're going to talk about your book in the days to come. We're looking forward. We're going to have a 1-hour special with a studio audience with you.
Fantastic.
I'm looking forward to it. Mr.
Thank
Secretary,
you.
good to see you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Rummy's Rules in bookstores everywhere. Coming up next, a member of the president's inner circle joins me live. He's going to try and defend this embattled administration. And welcome back to Hannity. 3 scandals, 1 administration, and a plethora of unanswered questions. So as pressure mounts against Obama and his White House diverts into damage control mode. So how's the anointed one going to deal with the Benghazi controversy, the IRS enemies list, and the AP spying allegations? Here to try and defend his old boss, former Obama economic advisor, professor at economics at the University of Chicago, Booth School of Business, Mr. Goolsbee. Well, I bet you're glad you're not.
I love you having me on, Sean. I appreciate it.
Listen, you know, somebody's got to come on from the Obama administration. Which of these 3 bothers you the most?
Well, yeah, I would like more details on all 3. But if the IRS thing is
we know it's
specifically targeted about parties, then I think that would be the one that disturbs me the most.
It's incontrovertible now. It's been established. They admitted to it. We have the IG report. I got all 54 pages here.
And I'm probably going to agree with you. But you read it. But here are the 2 things that are caveats. And then if they are true, then I will agree with you. But the caveats are, number 1, Congress passed the law that says for this type of nonprofit organization, you can't be a politically partisan organization and be donating this money. And they charge the IRS. They say, you go make sure that people are not politically partisan. Wait, hold on, let me finish.
Wait a minute.
So that's number 1.
They weren't targeting Media Matters. They weren't targeting the conservative
that's my point. That's where I agree with you.
But if you have the word Tea Party, Constitution.
If that's all they did, then I agree with you. That's what I said. That'd be the one that I'd be most disturbed about.
All right, that's the one you're most disturbed about. How concerned are you?
If that's the way they did it.
How concerned are you that the Justice Department seized the phone records of the AP to track down what they felt was a damaging press leak? Now, hang on. The AP said it's unprecedented and intrusive.
Well, I mean, it was done to the AP. Of course, they don't like it. This wasn't a big surprise. I mean, when the CIA director in his hearing was confirmed months ago, he talked about this exact case and said he felt that for national security reasons, the fact that they had gotten this CIA information is somehow secretly should be investigated. So that we've known about that for months. I'm surprised.
But you think it's okay to secretly seize the phone records of the press? Now wait a minute. There are other ways to get to the bottom of these things without seizing the phone records of a free press.
You may be true. I'm surprised, Sean, that you're making this argument. I mean, if you think that there's a national security basis for protecting the CIA,
I think there was a better way.
They were trying to figure out. There may be a better way. That's what they should figure out. I agree.
You're a good guy. You're not there, so I'm not going to put all the heat on you. But there's a problem with the administration, and to me, I think the biggest problem they have with all of these things is their inability to tell the truth. And I'll give you an example. We know that they screwed up in Benghazi. The CIA warned them to put more security on the ground. They didn't do it. They got requests for more security. They didn't do it. Somebody gave stand-down orders twice. We learned that last week. They didn't send the help. The president went to bed, and he went up campaigning the next day. Then they come out. Then we know Then we know the truth. And the truth, 12 versions of talking points, evolves into a lie. And you know what? The president 2 weeks later.
I was agreeing with you for a bit, but then I don't agree with that.
This is incontrovertible. These are facts.
No, wait a minute. The snippets you showed of the president, he's not making the contention one way or the other. He was specifically saying, we have to find out the facts.
2 weeks later, he was
citing only the CIA.
Stop. You're wrong. 2 weeks later, he was on The View, and we just played the answer, and he went to the United Nations.
I'll admit that I wasn't watching The View, Sean. I apologize. I didn't know you were watching The View.
She's going to retire in a year. You better be nice to Barbara Walters and my friend Elizabeth Hasselbeck.
I'm not trying to be mean to her. I just wasn't watching The View. I didn't know you were either.
We don't have a lot of time.
I'm focused.
Okay. So they went out. They never called Gregory Hicks. They never called the people on the ground. They never talked to the people on the ground. They prevented the press.
Now, hold on. What we found out today.
Hear me out.
Okay.
But they went out with something that was a great lie. Because nobody on the ground was saying that.
Find out what happened.
Nobody was saying that. Nobody.
Not true.
True.
In these hearings,
Sean,
here's what you should be nervous about. Here's what you should be nervous about. in these hearings, I agree, they've raised, you have, and Congress has raised various questions that we should get an answer to. But the great danger here, as I think you know, is that the Republicans in the House are going to massively overstep.
All right, stop for a second. I don't want to hear the politics.
Questions.
Listen, focus. Help me. Fixate. Focus.
I'm focused.
Come on, right
I'm
here.
100% focused.
Right, focus. Here's what I need you to focus on.
Let's let people answer the question. What we found out today is that the leaked emails, you're saying we knew the truth. Much of that was based on the quote-unquote leaked emails from the White House.
Austin.
And we found out today that those leaked emails were actually edited. Those were edited emails.
Here's what I need you to answer.
Focused.
They knew the truth about what really happened. They knew it was Ansar al-Sharia. They knew it was an al-Qaeda-linked group. They knew it wasn't spontaneous. They knew it had nothing to do with the video.
Some people thought that, and some people thought the opposite.
And that's what the talking points said. The talking points then evolved into an elaborate lie.
No, there wasn't in these talking points, there was disagreement between the CIA and others. And so they just said, let's wait to find out what happened.
Austin, you're a good guy. You're defending your friend. But the American people, this is not partisan, deserve the truth. The truth
they deserve
in government.
Answers, and
if
let's
we don't
answer
have
the
truth,
questions.
And
let's
we get lied
to,
we have soft tyranny in this
That's
country. That's what's a danger. We got to go. Thank you.
Okay.